The glass walls of Castellano Ventures reflected the Manhattan night sky like a mirror made of light, ambition, and pride. At the center of it all was Diana Castellano, the woman who had built an empire out of sleepless nights, cold numbers, and an unshakable belief that she could not lose. But tonight, everything she believed in was falling apart. It all began with a small red warning flashing on the screen. Then another, and another. Within seconds, every monitor in the office was flooded with error messages. Data breached, accounts erased, financial losses climbing with every heartbeat. The system was collapsing from the inside, right before her eyes. The empire she had spent 15 years building was burning silently. Diana slammed her fist on the mahogany desk. No, impossible. Her breathing came fast, tangled between fear and fury. The merger deal worth $12 billion, set to be signed at dawn, was now nothing but a shattered dream. Each passing minute drained millions of dollars from the system, along with her pride. Outside, the city still glowed. Skyscrapers soared. Streets sparkled. Life went on, indifferent to one woman's despair. Manhattan never stopped. It simply watched, quietly, as those who once thought themselves invincible began to fall. Diana had sent the tech team home hours ago. She couldn't bear another terrified look. She just wanted silence, to be alone with the ashes of the empire she'd built. But then, a small sound broke the stillness. Footsteps, slow, steady. Then the soft squeak of a wheel rolling across the floor. She looked up. A man in a blue janitor uniform was pushing a cleaning cart down the hallway. He stopped at the glass door of her office, startled to find her still there. His light brown hair was slightly tousled. His dark eyes met hers, calm, steady, neither curious nor afraid. Only a strange kind of quiet. Diana forced a bitter smile. Don't worry, you didn't break anything. I'm just sitting here, watching 15 years of my life turn to ashes. He hesitated, then tapped lightly on the glass door. Are you okay? His voice was low and warm, carrying a hint of Brooklyn in its tone that made the question sound genuinely kind. Okay? Diana let out a dry laugh. You tell me. My company just died right in front of me. His eyes flicked over the screens, still flashing red. That's a cyber attack, he said calmly. Diana froze. What did you say? He nodded slightly. I used to work in cybersecurity. Before, life sent me elsewhere. He paused for a second, then added, May I take a look? Diana blinked. The man pushing her cleaning cart had just offered to handle a crisis that her senior engineering team had failed to solve. She almost laughed, but there was no arrogance in his eyes, only the quiet certainty of someone who had fought chaos before. She silently stepped aside. Go ahead. He sat down. His fingers began flying over the keyboard, fast, precise, practiced, as if he had never left that world. The light caught the name tag on his chest. Jamie Sullivan. Diana asked softly, almost in a whisper. Who are you? Jamie didn't look up. His voice stayed calm, steady. Just someone who refuses to let things die before trying to save them. 6 hours earlier. Diana Castellano stood before the board of directors, her gaze sharp as a razor. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice calm but heavy with authority, the merger with Quantum Industries isn't just a strategic move. It's the leap that will put us at the top of the global tech world. Approving nods rippled around the table. Castellano Ventures, her brainchild, had once started in a cramped apartment, and now it had become a global conglomerate with more than 50,000 employees worldwide. But no one in that room knew that the powerful woman standing before them carried inside her a hollowness that words could barely describe. Diana hadn't built this company on intellect and ambition alone. She had built it out of everything she'd lost. 15 years ago, when Castellano Ventures was still just an idea, she missed her mother's birthday because of a meeting. When her mother fell ill, she didn't go home because she was negotiating with investors. And when her mother passed away, she didn't get to say goodbye, because at that moment she was in Singapore, signing a contract she thought would secure her future for life. Success always has its price, she often told herself. But tonight, she would begin to wonder whether that price had been too high. After the meeting, Diana returned to her office. The golden lights reflected on the marble floor, her shadow stretching long and silent. Stephanie Kim, the young chief technology officer, was waiting with an iPad in hand, her expression tense. "Diana, I need you to see this," she said, fingers swiping quickly across the screen. "What is it?" Diana frowned. "Some unusual activity in the system." "I'm not sure, but it seems like someone might be probing our internal network." Diana closed her eyes for a moment, inhaled deeply, then spoke in a cool, detached tone. "Strengthen the firewalls. We're about to close the biggest deal in the company's history. I don't want a single mistake, not even a small one." "Yes, ma'am," Stephanie nodded, though unease still lingered in her eyes. Diana didn't know. That was the very last moment she could have stopped the nightmare that was coming. At the same time, in another corner of the building, Jamie Sullivan was pushing his cleaning cart down the 12th floor hallway. The earphones in his ears were playing a podcast about Python programming. His blue uniform had faded after hundreds of washes. The same hands that had once written lines of code worth millions of dollars now held only a mop and a rag. But Jamie had no regrets. He glanced at the old watch on his wrist. 8 p.m., only one more hour left in his shift. Then he'd go home to Ruby. Ruby, the 7-year-old girl with big, bright eyes just like her mother's. The mother who had passed away when Ruby was only 6 months old, leaving Jamie with a tiny baby and a mountain of medical debt. He had once been a brilliant software engineer at a leading cybersecurity firm. He'd had everything: a high salary, reputation, and a promising future. But when his wife was diagnosed with cancer, everything collapsed. He quit his job to care for her. The savings ran dry, the insurance wasn't enough, and after 3 years of hopeless battle, she died. Jamie was left alone, with a daughter and a foggy future. No company wanted to hire a rusted engineer who had been out of the field for 3 years. In the tech world, 3 years away might as well be 30. So Jamie did the only thing he could. He became a janitor. By day, he mopped floors, emptied trash bins, scrubbed restrooms. By night, when Ruby was asleep, he opened his old laptop, reading documentation and learning new programming languages just to keep his mind from rusting. He still dreamed of returning to his old profession someday. But for now, the most important thing to him wasn't glory. It was being there for Ruby, the only person he had left. He remembered his daughter's question from the week before. "Daddy, why don't you work with computers like the other people?" He bent down, pulling her into his arms. "Because I want to spend more time with you, Ruby." "Working with computers sometimes takes away the most precious time we have." Ruby looked up, eyes wide. "But you're really good, Daddy. I saw you fix my laptop in just 5 minutes." Jamie laughed softly, brushing her hair. "I'll always be here with you, no matter what I do. That's what really matters." But tonight, as he stepped into Diana Castellano's office and saw the screens in chaos, the data flashing wildly like madness, something inside him stirred. The part of him that once lived for passion, that once believed in his own skill, suddenly awakened. And Jamie Sullivan, the man who mopped the floors where others created miracles, was about to create one of his own. Your backup servers, are they directly connected to the main servers? Jamie asked, his eyes still fixed on the screen. Diana looked at him, still not entirely grasping what was happening. The way he navigated the system, fast, precise, confident, made her feel as if this man had been working at Castellano for years. No, she replied hoarsely. They operate independently. Jamie nodded. Good. That's your miracle right there. He began typing long lines of code, the characters racing across the screen like a rushing symphony. The flood of errors that had filled the monitors moments ago gradually shifted in color. Folders began to reappear. Data was being restored piece by piece. For the first time that long night, Diana felt a faint spark of hope rise in her chest. I need full access, Jamie said, his voice low but steady. Diana hesitated for a second, then pulled the MasterCard from her wallet and placed it on the desk. You have it now. Don't make me regret this. Jamie looked up. His deep brown eyes carried a calm that was almost unsettling. I won't. But if this works, don't forget who was here with you. That quiet confidence made Diana smile, even in the midst of crisis. All right then, silent hero. They went down together to the basement. The server room Diana had once called the heart of Castellano Ventures. The air was freezing. Rows of machines stretched endlessly, their LED lights blinking like the dying breaths of a living organism. Jamie looked around, his eyes lighting up, the light of someone who had just rediscovered his purpose. We'll bring it back, he said, placing his hand on the control panel. But I'll need silence. And 6 hours. All right, Diana answered softly. For the first time, she wasn't the one giving orders. As Jamie worked, Diana stood watching in silence. He wasn't rushing, nor was he panicking. Each keystroke echoed rhythmically, like a heartbeat in the night. Time passed. The coffee went cold. The air thickened with tension and hope. 3 in the morning. The screen suddenly changed color. The red alerts flickered, then vanished completely. One folder appeared, then another, then all of them. The system began rebooting. Diana leaned forward, unable to believe her eyes. Wait, is this real? Jamie leaned back in the chair, a tired but proud smile spreading across his face. Your empire's breathing again, Ms. Castellano. It just needed a little artificial respiration. Diana laughed. For the first time in years, the sound wasn't cold. How do I even thank you, Jamie Sullivan? He shook his head, his voice gentle but firm. Don't thank me. Just fix what's broken outside the system. That'll be enough. When dawn's first light filtered through the vents, the words appeared on the screen. System restored successfully. Diana stared at the message, silent, overwhelmed. Jamie exhaled, his eyes a blend of exhaustion and relief. Congratulations, he said quietly. You're alive again. Diana turned to him, her smile softening. No, we're alive again. When the first employees arrived that morning, they froze. In front of them sat the powerful CEO of Castellano Ventures, sharing a cup of cold coffee with a janitor, the two speaking softly amid a sea of glowing monitors. None of them knew that the ordinary man beside her had just saved the company, or that this very moment, the moment when two worlds that were never meant to meet finally did, would change Diana Castellano's life forever. If you believe that sometimes the people who walk into our lives are no coincidence, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story of fate. And tell me, If a stranger appeared just when you'd lost everything, would that be a second chance? Or a test from destiny? The next morning, the atmosphere inside Castellano Ventures felt unlike anything Diana had ever experienced. People whispered as she passed by. No one knew exactly what had happened overnight, only that something monumental had changed. The servers were alive again. The data had been restored. The company had escaped death by an inch. And all of it, thanks to a man no one had ever bothered to look at twice. That morning, Diana summoned the senior management team to the conference room. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, reflecting off her calm face. "I want to introduce someone," she said, her voice steady but echoing through the room. "This is Jamie Sullivan. If it weren't for him, we probably wouldn't be sitting here this morning." The room fell silent. The man standing beside her, still in the same blue uniform from the night before, bowed slightly, his hands clasped in front of him. No one spoke, but their eyes said it all. Doubt, astonishment, and a hint of disbelief. Stephanie Kim, the chief technology officer, folded her arms, her tone firm. "You're saying a janitor managed to fix a system that our entire tech department couldn't?" Diana didn't flinch. "That's exactly what I said, Stephanie." She met her gaze. "Starting today, Jamie will lead our new cybersecurity division. He'll report directly to me." The room buzzed with murmurs. Stephanie bit her lip, struggling to stay composed, though her frustration was written all over her face. She didn't argue, not in front of the board, and not in front of the woman once believed to be never wrong. When the meeting ended, Stephanie followed Diana down the hallway. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice low but brimming with anger. "You're putting your trust in someone you barely know." Diana stopped and turned. Her gaze was cool, not cruel, filled with quiet certainty. "I know what I saw, Stephanie. And I know when someone can do what others only talk about." She paused for a beat. "Jamie saved this company, and I trust him." Then she walked away, leaving Stephanie frozen in the hallway, her mind swirling with questions she didn't dare to voice. That afternoon, Jamie returned to the building. No longer a janitor, no longer pushing a cleaning cart. His new employee badge gleamed as the elevator doors closed behind him. Those who had once walked past him without a glance now stepped aside. But even as he appeared calm, Jamie knew. Every pair of eyes was on him, waiting to see if he would stumble. Diana was waiting for him on the top floor, beside the tall glass window overlooking the city. "Ready for round two?" she asked, a rare, faint smile softening the face that had always been stern. "Always ready," Jamie replied, his voice low and steady. She led him down the sunlit corridor and stopped at a small room beside her office. "Everything you need is here," Diana said. "I want you to start from scratch. Rebuild Castellano's cybersecurity system." Jamie nodded, his gaze gentle. "You don't need to thank me. Just don't lose faith when things get hard." Diana smiled, genuinely, perhaps for the first time. "I've already learned that. From you." But there was one thing Diana still didn't know. The truth about the man who had just saved her company. That night, when Jamie returned to his small apartment in West Village, a pair of tiny footsteps came running from inside. "Daddy!" Ruby threw herself into his arms, her hair loose and smelling faintly of baby shampoo. Jamie knelt down, holding her tight, feeling her warm little breaths against his neck. "Hey, Princess. What did you learn today?" Ruby proudly held up a drawing. "Teacher taught us about the planets. I drew Mars. See, it's bright red." Jamie smiled, eyes filled with pride. "It's beautiful. My girl's the best in the world." The apartment was small, peeling paint, old furniture, but every corner breathed love and resilience. Drawings taped to the walls, a few children's books, Ruby's teddy bear she hugged every night. This wasn't the life Jamie had once dreamed of, but it was the life he had chosen to keep. "Daddy," Ruby hesitated, her voice small. "Today my friends asked what you do for work. I didn't know what to say." Jamie paused, then knelt down so their eyes met. "Listen to me, sweetheart. I do a very important job. I help people keep their workplaces clean and safe. There's nothing to be ashamed of." Ruby pressed her lips together. "But I heard you talking to Miss Laura. You said you used to work with computers. Why don't you do that anymore?" The question sliced deep, small but sharp. Jamie was silent for a few seconds, then said softly, "Because when your mom got sick, I had to stay home to take care of her. And after she was gone, I needed a job that let me be with you more. Computers can wait." "But you can't." Ruby wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, "I love you, Daddy." Jamie held her tight. "I love you too. Always." When Ruby was asleep, the apartment sank into quiet. Jamie sat alone under the desk lamp, staring at the old laptop before him. He knew what lay ahead. A second chance. A chance to return to the work he loved, to prove he wasn't outdated. But he also knew it would cost him the most precious thing of all: time with his daughter. The light from the screen reflected on his face. Weary, but resolute. "I can do this," he whispered, his voice firm as a vow. "I have to." For Ruby, the first days in Jamie's new position were anything but easy. Every morning he woke at 5, made breakfast for Ruby, took her to school, then caught the first bus to the office. At night, he came home at 7, just in time for dinner with her, reading a short bedtime story before she fell asleep. When the apartment sank into silence, Jamie opened his laptop and kept working late into the night, the blue light washing over his determined face. He rebuilt the entire digital infrastructure of Meridian from scratch, rewriting code, restructuring the security system, implementing encryption protocols, and training a small team of loyal engineers. The company's revival quickly became a topic in financial newspapers. Investors returned. Clients praised their rebirth from the ashes. But behind the spotlight, Jamie felt something was off. A shadow still lurked somewhere within the system. And this time, he intended to find it. One evening, long after the office had emptied, Jamie still sat before the glowing screen, its light reflected on his tired face. The door opened quietly. Diana appeared, still in her tailored suit, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. "I figured you'd still be here," she said, half reproach, half admiration. Jamie took the cup, nodding gratefully. "Something's wrong," he said in a low voice. He pointed to the monitor, where lines of code scrolled endlessly. "These signatures match the old attack pattern, but now they're coming from inside our own system." Diana's face hardened. "You mean someone inside the company is behind this?" "I can't prove it yet," he replied, eyes never leaving the screen. "But someone here knows this system too well." The next day, Jamie quietly began his digital hunt. He tracked every suspicious access point, built dozens of decoy traps, and created fake data vaults designed to lure the intruder. But each trace dissolved into layers of sophisticated encryption, fake proxies, and ghost admin accounts, until he noticed a repeating pattern: a device logging in late at night with administrator privileges. When he cross-checked the timestamps, one name appeared again and again: Stephanie Kim. Jamie's heartbeat quickened. He had sensed Stephanie's hostility went far beyond ordinary competition. But now, he had proof. That night, Jamie walked into Diana's office, holding a flash drive. "We need to talk," he said. His tone was low and firm, enough for Diana to know this wasn't just a technical report. He plugged the drive into her computer. The screen lit up, dense logs spilling out like a map of wrongdoing. "These are from the internal servers," Jamie said. "Stephanie used her account to access restricted data the night of the attack. Then she wiped the access logs and rerouted admin privileges." "This is the breach point." Diana stared at the screen, speechless. "You're sure?" "Absolutely," Jamie said. "I checked the metadata." She tried to cover her tracks, but she wasn't good enough. Diana stood, pacing slowly around the room. "If this leaks, we'll lose our investors again. The board will panic. The press will tear us apart." "Then don't let it leak," Jamie replied, his voice cold. "Let her think she's still safe. Give me time to find out who she's working for." Diana stopped, looking at him, her eyes a mix of admiration and concern. "That's dangerous, Jamie." He gave a faint smile. "Trusting me that first night was dangerous too." "But you did." In the days that followed, Jamie entered a silent cat-and-mouse game. He secretly monitored Stephanie's every move, setting up honeypot systems that mimicked the company's most sensitive databases. Each time she typed a command, he learned a little more about how she operated. He barely slept. Each night was a mental duel between an engineer and a traitor. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became. Stephanie wasn't acting alone. Someone else, powerful, dangerous, was pulling the strings. Late one night, as Jamie was packing up to leave, his phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Jamie froze. His reflection in the glass window stared back, calm but defiant. He took a screenshot, sent it to Diana, and locked his phone. Seconds later, she called. Her voice was sharp and quick. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," he said, "but this proves we're getting close." Diana exhaled slowly. "Then we need to get ahead of them." The next morning, Jamie arrived early. As he stepped into the parking lot, something caught his eye. A small black device lying beneath his car's bumper. He crouched down, a GPS tracker. His chest tightened. Someone was watching him, knew where he went, where he lived. And worst of all, they knew about Ruby. For the first time, Jamie felt real fear. He could face any danger meant for him. But if his daughter was threatened, that was a line no one could cross. He brought the device to Diana's office. She looked at it, horrified. "We have to call the police." "Not yet," Jamie said, his voice steely. "If we do, they'll vanish. Let them think I don't know." "You're turning this into a trap," Diana realized. He nodded. "Exactly." She looked at him, her voice lowering. "Jamie, you have a daughter. What if something happens to you?" "Nothing will," he said, though his voice trembled slightly. "I'll be careful. But we can't let them get away." That night, the building was silent. Jamie sat at his desk, pretending to focus on a fake data file. Diana waited in her office, lights off, the only glow coming from the faint blue hue of the corridor. The air was thick with tension. 11:40 p.m. The security camera flickered. A shadow appeared. The door creaked open. Stephanie Kim stepped in, holding a folder, her voice far too calm to be casual. "Working late again, Jamie?" "As always," he replied without turning. "You've made quite a name for yourself," she said, approaching. "The boss's favorite." "I'm just doing my job." "Funny," she sneered. Your job seems to involve snooping into mine. She reached for the mouse. Don't touch that, Jamie said quietly, his tone calm but sharp as a blade. At that very moment, the lights snapped on. Diana stepped out of the shadows, eyes unwavering. It's over, Stephanie. Stephanie froze, her eyes darting back and forth between them. Confused, trembling, yet still holding a defiant edge. You think you understand what's happening here? She burst out, her voice edged with a dry laugh. You don't understand anything. Diana stepped forward, her tone calm but firm. Then explain it to us, Stephanie. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Castellano sold its soul long ago, to people who only care about profit, who don't mind what burns down as long as they make money. You're all just pawns. And sooner or later, you'll see. Jamie stood still, watching her closely. You're talking about neuroline systems, aren't you? The silence that followed was louder than any confession. They paid you to sabotage us, Diana said, her voice dropping to a cold whisper. Sabotage? Stephanie smirked. No, I call it exposure. And one day, you'll understand. She shoved the folder against Diana's chest and turned sharply to leave. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor. Stephanie, Jamie called. But she didn't stop. By the time security arrived, the elevator was empty. The surveillance feed flickered for a few seconds, then went black. Jamie slammed his hand on the desk, his voice caught in his throat. She knows how to disable the data feed. Diana exhaled, staring at the blank screen. We'll find her. We have to. At dawn, after nearly 10 hours without sleep, Jamie traced the first lead. Buried deep within layers of encrypted code, he found a series of anonymous transactions, all routed to a shell company in California. He looked up at Diana, his voice rough but steady. This goes beyond Stephanie. Neuroline's been buying people inside our company, maybe even the board. They're trying to take us down from the inside. Diana rubbed her temples, her eyes weary but clear. So, what do we do now? Expose them, Jamie said, each word heavy with resolve. But on our terms. Diana stared at him for a long moment. You realize this could destroy both of us, right? Jamie gave a faint smile, his eyes unwavering. Or it could be the way to fix everything. But as Jamie was leaving the office that morning, his phone buzzed. A message from Laura, Ruby's babysitter. Jamie, there's a strange man standing by the school gate watching Ruby. She's terrified. Please come now. Jamie's chest clenched. He didn't say a word, just grabbed his jacket and bolted out the door. He didn't wait for the elevator, running down 3 flights of stairs, through the lobby, bursting out into the street. When he reached the school, Ruby was sitting in the principal's office, clutching her teddy bear, her eyes red and swollen. Daddy! She cried, leaping into his arms. Jamie hugged her tightly, his whole body shaking. Are you okay? Did anyone hurt you? Ruby hiccuped between sobs. There was a man, Daddy. He was just standing outside the gate, staring at me. I got so scared. Laura, the middle-aged woman who had cared for Ruby since she was a baby, placed a hand on Jamie's shoulder. I called security. He ran off. But Jamie, what's going on? Jamie looked down at his daughter, her tiny eyes still glistening with tears. In that moment, he saw it clearly, how terribly wrong he had been. He thought he could protect Ruby by keeping his 2 worlds separate. But now, his work had dragged his little girl into danger. Laura, he said, his voice low but firm, I need you to keep Ruby at your place for a few days. Don't go out. I'll explain later. Laura frowned, worried. Jamie, are you in trouble? No, he said, though his eyes told another story. I just need to make sure my daughter's safe. That afternoon, Jamie stayed home with Ruby. He cooked her favorite spaghetti, watched cartoons with her, read her a bedtime story. But his mind was elsewhere, in the darkness closing in around them. When Ruby finally drifted to sleep, her small face lay bathed in the soft light, peaceful to the point of heartbreak. Jamie sat there for a long time, remembering the day she was born, remembering the promise he'd made to his wife in that hospital room. Don't worry. I'll protect our daughter, no matter what it costs. Now, in his hunger to prove himself, in his belief that he could control everything, he had put Ruby in harm's way. His phone buzzed. Diana's name lit up. "Jamie, where are you? We need—" "I can't," he interrupted, his voice breaking. "They've gotten close to Ruby." I'm sorry, Diana. I have to step back." A long silence. Then Diana's voice softened. Warmer, gentler, sincere. "Jamie, I understand. Family comes first. You don't need to apologize. The company will survive. We've done it once before. But Ruby, she only has one father. Stay with her." Tears slid down Jamie's cheeks. "Thank you." "No," Diana said quietly. "I should be the one thanking you. For everything." After the call, Jamie sat there, watching Ruby sleep peacefully under her blanket. And then he understood. If he walked away now, the people behind all this would win. They would do it again. To others. To other families. To other children. He heard his wife's voice echo from some distant memory. "You're stronger than you think, Jamie. Don't let fear take that from you. Teach our daughter to be brave. Teach her to fight for what's right." Jamie wiped his tears, leaned down, and kissed Ruby's forehead. "I'll protect you," he whispered, "but I'll also teach you that we don't run from evil. We face it." He picked up his phone and called Diana again. "I'm coming back," he said, his voice low but resolute. "But this time, we do it my way. And we end this, once and for all." The following week, as Jamie worked day and night tracing Stephanie's digital trail, he uncovered something far more terrifying. Stephanie wasn't the mastermind. She was merely a tool, a pawn in a much larger game. As Jamie dug deeper into the encrypted financial files, another name surfaced, and it made his blood run cold. Valerie Stone, Castellano's chief financial officer. Valerie had been with Diana since the very beginning. She was a friend, a mentor, and the one person Diana trusted completely. But according to the data Jamie found, Valerie had been selling confidential information to Neuroline through a shell consulting firm called North Park Consulting. Jamie went straight to Diana. "Valerie?" Diana repeated, her voice trembling. "That's impossible. I've known her for over 10 years. She's been with me since the startup days." "That's exactly what makes it dangerous," Jamie said slowly. "No one ever doubts loyalty until loyalty becomes betrayal." Diana sank into her chair, as if her legs could no longer hold her. "Why?" she whispered. "I gave her everything. Power, money, respect." Jamie looked at her, his voice lowering. "Sometimes people don't betray because they lack something. They betray because they feel unseen." Diana lifted her head, pain filling her eyes. "But I did see her." "Did you really?" Jamie asked quietly but directly. "Or did you only see her role?" The question cut deep. Diana fell silent, and in that moment, she realized she had done the same to Jamie. Once, she had seen him as nothing but a janitor, until he saved the entire company. Finally, she drew a deep breath. "We need proof. Solid proof. No mistakes." Jamie nodded. "I'll set a trap. But this time, we have to be extremely careful." Over the next 3 days, Jamie built a flawless digital honeypot, an isolated server that perfectly mimicked Castellano's financial infrastructure, filled with fake data and hidden trackers. Every detail was so convincing, it bordered on perfection. On the fourth night, the trap was sprung. An intrusion alert flashed on his screen. Someone was accessing Castellano's system. Jamie stared at the monitor, his pulse racing. "I have the location," he said quickly into the phone. "The signal's coming from an office in Manhattan." Diana's reply was short and sharp. "We end this tonight." They drove through the deserted city streets, the lights reflecting off the windshield like a pulsing heartbeat. Neither spoke. The silence between them was taut, stretched thin, ready to snap. The building appeared ahead, a glowing block of glass against the dark. Jamie hooked his laptop into the building's internal network right from the lobby, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Valerie's logging in from the top floor," he said. Diana clenched her fists. "Let's go." "No," Jamie stopped her. "We do this together." They found Valerie in a corner office, calm, composed, almost eerily serene, as if she'd known they would come. "Diana," Valerie said softly, "you shouldn't be here." Diana stepped forward, fury burning in her eyes. "You sold us out. You sold me out." Valerie smiled faintly, her gaze tinged with pity. "Is that what you think? That I'd destroy something that wasn't already rotten?" "What are you talking about?" "Neuroline gave me freedom," Valerie said slowly. "Something you never did." "Freedom doesn't come from betrayal," Jamie said, his voice calm but cutting. Valerie turned to him, her eyes sharp as steel. "And you, Mr. Sullivan, Castellano's hero. Do you really think you're anything more than another pawn? When this is over, they'll forget you ever existed." Jamie's reply was quiet, but solid as stone. "Maybe, but at least I'll know I fought for something that mattered." He pressed a key on his laptop. Valerie's screen froze instantly, red warnings flashing across the monitors. "Everything you've done has been recorded," Jamie said softly. "In a few minutes, the authorities will have all the evidence." For the first time, Valerie's composure faltered. She drew in a breath, her voice barely a whisper. "You think it ends here? There are people far more powerful than you can imagine." "Maybe," Diana said, her gaze unwavering. "But tonight, it ends with you." Minutes later, federal agents entered, led by Diana's legal counsel. Valerie didn't resist. As they cuffed her and escorted her out, she looked back at Jamie, that faint, cryptic smile still lingering at the corner of her lips. "Enjoy your victory while it lasts," she murmured. "Heroes always fall the hardest." The next morning, the news exploded across every major headline. "Castellano Ventures CFO arrested for corporate espionage, linked to Neuroline Systems." The entire financial world was in shock. Investors held their breath, waiting to see whether Diana Castellano's empire would crumble or rise again. But then, something no one expected happened. Instead of turning their backs on her, the public rallied behind Diana. They saw how she faced betrayal, not with denial or blame, but with transparency and courage. Within 24 hours, Castellano Ventures' stock value skyrocketed. A crisis that could have destroyed the company had instead become the foundation for a new beginning. But for Jamie, the victory was far from sweet. In the weeks following Valerie's arrest, he returned to his usual rhythm. Still arrived at the office on time. Still spent long hours at his desk, building the strongest cybersecurity team in the industry. But every day, at exactly 6 o'clock, he left. No delays, no exceptions. One afternoon, As the clock read 5:45, his office door opened. Diana walked in, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Heading out early again?" she asked, half teasing, half smiling. "As always," he replied, closing his laptop. Diana sat in the chair across from him, her voice softening. "Jamie, I've never asked you one thing. Why did you give up your career to become a janitor?" He was silent for a moment, then pulled a worn photo from his wallet. It was of a young woman holding a 6-month-old baby, her gentle smile glowing, her eyes bright as candlelight. "This is my wife," he said quietly. "She passed away 3 years ago from cancer." Ruby was 6 months old. Diana fell silent. The light in the room seemed to dim. "I used to be a successful engineer," Jamie continued, "but when she got sick, I realized all the meetings, the contracts, the promotions, none of it meant anything compared to holding the hand of the person you love in a hospital room." "You gave up everything," Diana whispered. Jamie shook his head. "No, I just chose what mattered more." After she was gone, no one wanted to hire a so-called outdated engineer, but they needed cleaners. And that job gave me something tech never could: time with my daughter. Diana swallowed hard. "But now that you're back in your career, you could—" "I won't make the same mistake twice," he interrupted gently but firmly. "Ruby needs me, every night. Not the successful version of me, just me." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded softly. "You're a wonderful father, Jamie." He smiled, barely above a whisper. "I'm just trying. That's all I can do." A few weeks later, Diana visited Jamie's apartment for the first time. It was small and modest, but filled with life. Ruby's drawings were taped across the walls. Stacks of books covered the table. Toys scattered everywhere. Chaotic, yet strangely warm. Ruby ran out, her hair in a crooked ponytail, eyes wide with curiosity at the unfamiliar woman. "Hello, ma'am," she said politely. "Hello, Ruby," Diana smiled, her eyes soft. "Your dad's told me so much about you." The little girl beamed. "Daddy says you're his boss." "Did you know my dad's really smart?" Diana laughed. "I do. Your dad saved my company." Ruby's jaw dropped, her eyes wide with awe. "Really? Daddy, that's so cool." Jamie flushed, waving her off. "Go do your homework, sweetheart." When Ruby dashed back into her room, Diana looked around the apartment once more, then said quietly, "This is a beautiful home." "It's small," Jamie replied, "but it's ours." Diana smiled gently, her tone softening. "Jamie, I want to make you an offer." He raised an eyebrow, curious. "I want to implement a new policy at Castellano. Flexible work arrangements for single parents. You'll be able to work from home 3 days a week." Jamie stared at her, stunned, as if he hadn't heard correctly. You're serious?" "Completely," Diana nodded. "You taught me something important. That success means nothing if we lose what truly matters. I want Castellano to be a place where people can have both." Jamie couldn't speak. He just nodded, lips trembling, tears glimmering in his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly. Diana smiled as she stood up. "No, Jamie," she said quietly. "I should be the one thanking you. You didn't just save the company. You reminded me of what I'd forgotten. The reason I started all of this." 6 months passed. Castellano Ventures not only recovered, it rose stronger than ever. The cybersecurity division led by Jamie became an industry standard. But more importantly, the company had begun to transform under the new policies Diana had introduced after the crisis. She founded the Second Chance Program, an initiative to recruit people society had overlooked, but who carried extraordinary potential and determination. a once homeless engineer, a designer who had served time for a crime he didn't commit, a programmer who lost her job caring for her ailing parents. Diana saw them, just as Jamie had once seen her on the darkest night of her life, and each of them brought something no university or corporation could ever teach: gratitude, resilience, and the hunger to prove themselves. One afternoon, Diana knocked on Jamie's office door. "I have something to show you," she said, a gentle smile on her lips. She led him down to the basement, the old server room, where everything had begun. Now, the space looked completely different. Soft white light glowed on freshly painted walls, modern equipment gleamed, and above the doorway hung a metal plaque engraved with the words, "The Sullivan Innovation Center." Jamie stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat. You didn't have to do this," he said, voice trembling. "I wanted to," Diana replied, "because this company wouldn't exist without you. And maybe, neither would I." He stepped inside. The room had become a vibrant hub of innovation. Open workspaces, research stations, and in the far corner, a small area for children. Coloring tables, toys, and a tiny chair by the window. Diana smiled at the look of astonishment in his eyes. "So, when Ruby comes to visit," she said softly, "she'll have a safe place to play while you work." Jamie couldn't hold it in any longer. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He clenched his hands, his voice breaking. I don't even know what to say." Diana placed a steady, gentle hand on his shoulder. "You gave me a second chance when the company was falling apart," she said. "Now it's my turn to do the same for you." That evening, Jamie brought Ruby to the center. She ran around the room, eyes glowing with wonder. "Daddy, is this your place?" "Not just mine," he said, smiling down at her. "Ours, and everyone's who works with me." Ruby stopped in front of the plaque. "Sullivan, that's our name." Jamie smiled, his voice trembling. "That's right, sweetheart." She threw her arms around him, whispering softly, "You're amazing, Daddy." "I'm so proud of you." Jamie hugged her tightly, feeling the whole world shrink into that single moment. "I'm proud of you too, Ruby," he said. "You're the reason I did all of this." 2 months later, on a lightly rainy evening, Diana and Jamie stood in front of the Castellano Ventures building. Raindrops glittered under the city lights. The streets, cars, and people still moving in their usual rush, as if there had never been a night when their world nearly collapsed. "Do you remember the night we first met?" Diana asked, her voice low, blending into the sound of the rain. Jamie smiled. "How could I forget? I was supposed to mop the floors, and somehow ended up saving an empire." Diana shook her head with a faint laugh. "No, you saved more than that. You taught me how to see." "See what?" Jamie asked softly. "The invisible ones," she said slowly. "Do you know how many times I walked past you in these halls? How many times I never looked at you, never said thank you, never even asked your name?" Jamie stayed silent. The rain fell steadily. The city lights reflected in her eyes. "You were always there," Diana continued, her voice trembling slightly. "But I was too consumed by my own success to notice. And then, on the night I lost everything, you were there again. Not because you had to be, but because you cared. Anyone would have done the same." Jamie began. "No," she interrupted. "Most people would have walked away. But you didn't. You stopped. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. Not for praise, not for recognition. Just because it was the right thing to do." Just then, a homeless man pushed an old shopping cart past them, his clothes soaked through. Diana looked after him, then suddenly called out, "Hello there." The man looked up, startled. Hello? I'm Diana," she said gently. "Are you hungry?" The man blinked, voice shaking. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." Diana smiled, handing him a business card. "This is my company's address. We have a program for people who need a new opportunity. If you want to, come see us." He took the card, his hands trembling, tears mixing with the rain. "Thank you. Thank you so much." As the man disappeared into the rain, Jamie turned to her. "You've changed," he said. "No," she replied softly, her gaze distant. "You taught me to see. And now, I can't stop seeing." They found a small cafe nearby to wait out the rain. Raindrops tapped gently on the glass roof above. Diana stirred her coffee slowly, then said in a quiet voice, "Jamie, I've been thinking a lot about Valerie." "About her?" "The night we caught her," Diana said, her eyes unfocused. "She told me, 'You saw him after one night. I was here 15 years, and you never saw me.'" Jamie stayed silent, waiting. "And she was right," Diana admitted. "I never really saw her. I only saw her title, my CFO. I never asked how she was doing, or if she was happy. I took her loyalty for granted." "You can't keep blaming yourself," Jamie murmured. "But I can learn from it," she said firmly. "Valerie was wrong to betray us, but I was wrong too, for not seeing her. Both can be true." Jamie nodded slowly. "So what will you do next?" Diana looked out through the glass, where streetlights blurred in the rain. "I'll keep seeing," she said. "Every person in this company, every person out there. I'll never forget that everyone carries a story, a pain, a dream." A few weeks later, Diana stepped onto the stage of a major international tech conference. Hundreds of CEOs, investors, and journalists sat below, watching her intently. "People ask me," she began, her voice echoing through the microphone, "how Castellano Ventures recovered from the worst crisis in its history." She paused, scanning the room. "They think it was strategy, or technology, or money." Then she smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "But the truth is, we were saved by someone most people never see. A single father, once a janitor, quietly raising his little girl. A brilliant engineer the world had forgotten." The hall fell utterly silent. "Jamie Sullivan taught me the greatest lesson of my life, that the invisible are often the strongest. They're the ones who've been knocked down but still get up. The ones who've lost everything but still give. The ones who don't need the spotlight to do what's right." Her voice trembled slightly. "So I want to leave you all with a challenge. Look, truly look, at the janitor in your building, at the barista downstairs, at the person sleeping on the sidewalk. They're not invisible. We just haven't been seeing them." The audience erupted into a standing ovation. But Diana didn't look toward the front rows filled with tycoons and executives. She looked toward the back of the hall, where Jamie stood with Ruby, their hands clasped, both smiling brightly. The stage lights reflected in their eyes. And in that moment, Diana knew. This was no longer the story of a company. It was the story of people who had finally been seen. 2 years later. The lives of both Jamie and Diana had changed in ways neither of them could have imagined. Castellano Ventures was no longer just a leading technology company. It had become a symbol of humanity. The Second Chance program that Diana had founded had now employed over 500 people once forgotten by society. Reformed ex-convicts, single mothers, engineers who had lost everything to misfortune. They weren't just working. They were finding themselves again. Jamie was no longer the quiet man bowing his head in a blue janitor's uniform. He was now the director of cybersecurity and a mentor to dozens of young employees, people struggling to find balance between career and family. And Ruby, the little girl who once drew a red Mars on a sheet of paper stuck to the fridge, had grown, more mature, confident, and bright. She was growing up in a world where kindness mattered more than success, where adults weren't too busy to listen, and where family was always the first refuge. One evening, when the Sullivan Innovation Center was lit only by the warm glow of the last few computer screens, Diana walked in. Ruby sat in the children's corner, coloring her newest drawing. Jamie was at his desk, eyes fixed on streams of code running across the monitor. "Hey," Diana called softly. Jamie looked up, smiling. "Hey there. Coffee or code?" "No, not work this time." She sat down beside him, looking a little uneasy, something rare for a woman who once silenced entire boards of directors with a glance. "You know," she began slowly, "when I founded Castellano, I believed success meant never needing anyone. That strength came from standing alone." Jamie tilted his head, listening. "And now?" Diana smiled, her gaze softer than ever. "Now I know. Real strength comes from knowing when you need others. You gave me more than a company saved, Jamie. You gave me a lesson in compassion, in truly seeing people." And in caring, Jamie looked at her, warmth in his eyes. "You taught me too, Diana. You taught me that second chances are real, and that the past doesn't define who we are." They sat in silence for a moment. Only the soft sound of Ruby's pencil could be heard from the corner. Diana spoke again, quietly. "Jamie, I don't know where we'll go from here, but there's one thing I'm certain of." She paused, searching for the words. "I want you in my life, not just as a colleague, but as a friend, as family." Jamie met her eyes, smiling. "I feel the same," he said gently. "Family isn't just blood. It's the people who make us the best version of ourselves." Just then, Ruby ran up, waving her drawing. "Daddy! Miss Diana! I finished my picture." She held it up proudly, a drawing of 3 people, a man, a woman, and a little girl, standing in front of a glowing building, the sun shining above them. "This is us," Ruby said, beaming. "My family." Jamie and Diana looked at each other, smiles breaking through tears. "That's right, Princess," Jamie whispered, wrapping Ruby in his arms. "This is our family." The story of Castellano Ventures and Jamie Sullivan quickly spread beyond the borders of the United States. It became a symbol of redemption, faith, and the power of quiet courage. Investors called it the miracle of recovery. But for Diana and Jamie, it had never been about numbers. It was about learning to trust again, about learning to truly see the people society had once overlooked. And more importantly, it was about realizing that the most extraordinary people are often the ones no one notices, until everything falls apart. That night, as they stepped out of the building under a light drizzle, the city lights reflected in the puddles like 1,000 fallen stars. Diana turned to him with a soft smile. "You know," she said gently, "I don't think miracles come from the sky. They come from people who refuse to give up." Jamie looked at her, his voice low and warm. "Then you're the only miracle I'll ever need." Ruby held both their hands, skipping through the rain, her laughter ringing bright in the glowing city night. And in that moment, for the first time in many years, the 3 of them felt something no amount of money could ever buy. They were seen, they were loved, and they belonged. Do you believe that sometimes it's the smallest people who can change the world? How did this story make you feel? Surprised, moved, or inspired? If you felt something stir in your heart, type 100 in the comments to let me know you too believe in second chances. Tell me where you're watching from, and share this story with someone who needs to be seen. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person who truly sees you to change everything.